I found my wife's key to another house because she asked me for a roll of packing tape. It was in our utility drawer, under two flashlights and a box of picture hooks. A normal silver house key, worn smooth around the teeth, attached to a scratched blue plastic tag. 418 Alderbrook Drive. The address was here in Roanoke, Virginia. I'd lived in Roanoke for 34 years. I didn't know anyone on Alderbrook Drive. I turned the tag over. Back was written in black marker. Did you find the tape? Claire called. Yeah. I slipped the key back, where I'd found it, and carried the tape into the dining room. She was sealing a box of old towels she'd said she was donating. I kept my voice casual. Do you know anybody on Alderbrook Drive? Claire stopped pulling tape across the cardboard. No. Why? There was a detour sign near there yesterday. Thought I recognized the street. Oh. She cut the tape. Don't think I've ever been over there. That was different from saying she couldn't remember somebody. It was a direct answer. Claire finished the box and asked whether I wanted soup for lunch. I said sure. 3 days later, while looking for a replacement fuse, I noticed the key was gone. What bothered me wasn't that Claire possessed a house key I didn't recognize. People end up with keys for neighbors, relatives, volunteer work. It was a tag. The corners were rounded. The plastic had scratches around the hole from writing against other keys. Claire had used it enough to wear it, and when I'd given her the easiest possible chance to explain Alderbrook Drive, she looked straight at me and said she didn't know anybody there. My name is Warren Hale. I'm 66. Claire is 62, and we've been married 37 years. I retired from commercial building maintenance 3 years ago. Claire still works part-time scheduling volunteers for a community nonprofit. I've always been better with broken things than uncomfortable conversations. Years ago, our daughter called upset because her kitchen faucet leaked and her landlord kept ignoring it. Claire asked what the landlord had said to her. I drove over with a wrench. After I replaced the cartridge, Claire said she's still angry. The faucet doesn't leak. That wasn't my point. It was her point yesterday. Claire stared at me, then laughed despite herself. A week after I found a key, I was putting away clean towels when I noticed several white plastic switch plates on the laundry room shelf. They were still in hardware store sleeves. What's with these? I asked. Claire glanced in. Volunteer stuff. For where? A project. Later I needed masking tape from the same shelf. Behind the switch plates was a small cardboard envelope containing outlet covers and matching screws. Someone had written a list across the front. For switch plates, 2 outlet covers, cabinet felt pads, backlatch. Underneath, in Claire's handwriting, Alderbrook. Our house didn't need any of it. The next evening I asked, what kind of project are you doing lately? Just helping get a place ready. What place? She kept sorting laundry. One of ours. She didn't offer an address. The following Tuesday, I needed a replacement blade for my circular saw. My supplier is off Brambleton Avenue, less than 5 minutes from Alderbrook Drive. I passed the turn. At the next light, I made a legal U-turn. 418 was a narrow brick ranch with faded green shutters and a small carport. Claire's Honda was parked along the curb. I pulled into a public parking strip beside a neighborhood playground half a block away. I wasn't planning to sit there all afternoon. I wanted to know whether the key actually belonged to that house. I waited 7 minutes. Claire came out of the car, carrying a reusable shopping bag. Then she did exactly what I had hoped she wouldn't. She took out the silver key. She walked around the side of the house, used it on the back door, and let herself in. A minute later, a man stepped out of the carport. He looked about 60. Work boots, gray sweatshirt, reading glasses pushed onto his head. Claire came back outside. He said something I couldn't hear. She touched his forearm. He shook his head. Then she laughed, reached up, and straightened the collar of his sweatshirt. He put both hands on her shoulders and kissed her cheek. Claire hugged him. Not a quick hello. A real hug. They went inside together. Through the front window, I saw the man carry a lamp across the living room. I recognized it immediately. Brass base, green ceramic middle, crooked shade. It had been in our basement for years. 2 months earlier, Claire had asked if I cared whether she donated it. I'd said, please do. Now it was in this house. I drove home before Claire saw me. She arrived an hour and a half later, carrying the same reusable bag. How was your afternoon? She asked. Fine. The next morning, after she left for work, the Alderbrook key was back in the utility drawer. I took it out and set it on the kitchen table. When Claire came home, it was waiting between our two chairs. She saw the key before she took off her coat. Whose house is it? Claire didn't pretend not to understand. Warren. Whose? A man named Malcolm Reed is moving into it. I told her I'd seen them. Claire closed her eyes for a moment, then sat down. Malcolm wasn't a boyfriend. He wasn't even somebody she'd known before that spring. Claire's nonprofit worked with a small local transition program that prepared a few houses each year for adults starting over after major disruptions. Malcolm had spent several years caring for his father in another county. After his father moved into assisted living, Malcolm returned to Roanoke, found warehouse work, and needed an affordable place while he rebuilt his savings. Claire had volunteered on the Alderbrook house. The switch plates were for that house. So were the outlet covers, felt pads, and backlatch. Our basement lamp had been donated because Malcolm needed one. The hug. He'd just been told the house was ready for him next week. And the kiss. Warren, he thanked me. I believed her. But the key was still on the table. You told me you didn't know anybody on Alderbrook. I know. You said you'd never been there. I know. Why? Claire rubbed her thumb across the word back. Then she said, you were in that house before I ever was. I laughed once. No, I wasn't. Yes, 22 years ago. She waited. Remember the neighborhood repair partnership your company volunteered with? Something came back. A kitchen floor. Plumbing. A brick ranch I'd complained about for nearly a week. During that project, I kept calling it the Alderbrook house at dinner because the floor repair was giving me trouble. Later, when I had to return alone for another job, Claire had written 418 Alderbrook on our kitchen calendar, so I wouldn't forget the appointment. She watched my face. You had a key to that house too, Warren. 22 years earlier, my employer gave crews several paid volunteer days each year through a neighborhood rehabilitation partnership. The Alderbrook house had been assigned to my team. It was being prepared for a woman named Teresa Wynn. She'd spent years caring for her mother, then found herself in her late 40s working full-time again and needing a place she could manage on one income. What I remember was the kitchen floor. Somebody years earlier had cut too much from one joist for plumbing. The floor sagged beside the sink. I couldn't sister a normal board against it because pipes blocked the full span. So I built a double brace from shorter pieces and joined them around the plumbing with steel plates. It wasn't pretty. It worked. The house passed inspection. Teresa moved in. A few weeks later, she called the program because her washing machine couldn't sit close enough to the wall. The drain connection had been placed where the machine crushed the hose. I went back alone. I shifted the hookup, secured the drain, and pushed the machine into place. Maybe 40 minutes. Teresa tested it. Then she took something from a kitchen drawer, a brass wall hook shaped like an acorn. You should take this. I smiled. No, ma'am. Keep it. You came back. That's what the work order was for. She tried once more. I refused. That night I mentioned it to Claire while fixing a loose hinge on our pantry door. Claire asked, why did she want you to have it? Because I fixed the washer. I don't think that's what she was thanking you for. I tightened the last screw. Whatever it was, it's fixed now. Until Claire reminded me. I hadn't thought about Teresa Wynn or that brass hook in more than 20 years. Then Claire said, the hook is still in the house. The transition program hadn't gone looking for my old work. It had leased the Alderbrook property the previous fall after several ordinary owners had come and gone. Claire recognized the address on the project list because of those weeks I'd spent talking about the floor and the return visit she'd once marked on our calendar. She volunteered. The hook came later. While preparing the kitchen, volunteers removed a loose wooden strip beside the doorway. The brass acorn hook was attached to it. Behind the strip was a piece of old masking tape. Claire had it in her wallet. She placed it on the table. The writing was faded. For Warren if he comes back. That was all. Teresa hadn't lived there for years. Claire didn't know exactly where she was now. You remember the hook? I remembered you telling me about it. And that's why you stayed on this house. Yes. She'd planned to show me after the work was finished. Why wait? Claire looked at the tape. Because I could hear you saying it was old hardware, that Teresa was gone, that the house needed finishing. I opened my mouth, then stopped. That doesn't excuse lying to you, she said. When you said Alderbrook, I panicked. And you kept going. Yes. Malcolm was simply the incoming resident. The afternoon I'd seen them, the volunteers had finished his bedroom and told him he could move in the following week. After months of temporary arrangements, he finally had a place of his own. I pushed the key toward Claire. Back door. The front lock was being replaced. I looked at her. The lie? That one's mine. For the next few days, Claire and I spoke normally when we had to. Dinner. Groceries. Whether the recycling had gone out. Nothing about Alderbrook. On Friday, she asked, "Do you want to see the house before Malcolm moves in?" No. All right. She didn't ask again. Sunday morning, while Claire was loading the dishwasher, I said, "Is Alderbrook empty today?" She looked at me. Yes. Let's go. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint. No volunteers were there. Malcolm wasn't there. Claire didn't give me a tour. I found the kitchen myself. I crouched beside the sink and looked underneath. The plumbing had been changed twice, but behind it I could still see the steel plates from my double brace. My drill holes weren't straight. They never were. That yours? Claire asked. Yeah. Beside the kitchen doorway was the brass acorn hook. It had been remounted on the painted wooden strip. I touched it. It moved. Loose, I said. Claire leaned against the counter. Of course it is. A volunteer toolbox sat near the back door. I found a Phillips screwdriver and tightened the upper screw a quarter turn, then the lower one. I pressed the hook with my thumb. Solid. I put the screwdriver back. Claire didn't say anything about Teresa. Neither did I. At the back door was a small lockbox the program used for temporary access. Claire took the silver key from her pocket. The scratched blue tag still read, 418 Alderbrook Drive. On the reverse. Back. She worked the plastic ring loose and removed the tag. Then she held the bare key toward me. Would you put it in? I took it. The lockbox was already open. I laid the key inside, closed the metal cover, and pressed it until the latch clicked.